My name is Sonal Gupta. I think some of you know me. I run a local, it's a very informal group called Women in Life Sciences. I started that group during COVID because, like everybody else, I was going crazy at home. Just not because of my husband and kids, but and that's my husband in the front. Actually, my entire family is here. It was just a group of women who work in biotech, pharma, academia, life sciences. And over the years, I've bumped into so many of them. Baseball games, football games, you name it, right? So, and I realized how many of us work in this field. So, we're a long-term Lexington resident family. We've been here since 2006. My kids have gone only to Lexington public schools. And this is a way to just give back. So, and it's my pleasure to introduce this amazing panel. I'll actually let Ramani do the introduction. Ramani's my neighbor. We live very close to each other, and she's one of those, among this group, right, they're all great, but she's a rock star. Right? She's done so much, and I give her a chance to introduce herself. I work in biotech. I'm in clinical development, and I work for a very scrappy startup, which I love. I have so much respect for what this group has done. So, Ramani?
I'm going to project as well. If you cannot hear me, just raise your hand or scream or something. So thank you, Sonal, for inviting me. Sonal and I started chatting after I got back from Kilimanjaro with this great team. And she's like, would you mind talking to the women's group? I said, great. And then it expanded, and here we are. And I've got some great colleagues here with me. So by way of background, I'm a scientist turned corporate executive. I've been in the biopharma field for over 25 years. I'm also a Lexington resident, live right behind Sonal. And what we are here to do today is to talk about journeys, one of which is highlighted up here on the slide. And I've got a little PowerPoint presentation and some videos to the extent you're all interested in seeing what we did on the mountain in Kilimanjaro. But we also want to talk about our journey as scientists, corporate executives, how we got to where we are today, and given where we started. So we're going to keep this a very free-flowing, open forum, no formalities here. There was no formality when we climbed the mountain, I'm sure. We got to know each other really well. And so no holds barred, and I'm going to suggest that we keep this as open and as free-flowing as we all can. So what we're going to do is I'm going to move aside because I'm kind of moderating this discussion. And what I'm going to do is have each of you introduce yourselves. Well, let me just do some names here. Ram Iyer, Saul Fink, Wendy Nelson. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. And as you do that, actually, let's do introductions, then we'll dive into some of the questions I have. Okay, so Ram, go right ahead.
How deep are we going?
Tell them what you do and yeah, tell them what you do and what you did, as deep as you want.
All right, so I'm an engineer by training. I currently work in biotech. I run a CEO of a biotech company called Bio. My journey has been very circuitous. So for all the young folks here, you're probably going to change careers 4 or 5 times in your lifetime. I started as an engineer. My first job was at Bell Labs as a network engineer. That's my training. Then came back, got laid off. Came back to academia, got a PhD. Unfortunately, depending on how you look at it. And then ended up going into drug development at Janssen for about 8 years, which is J&J. Switched careers again, went into healthcare investment banking for a brief stint, and then in healthcare venture investment, which is financing and funding early stage startups, living in Paris. And then I came back here to the US now over 12 years ago. I've been working in the startup space, started 7 companies so far. Core was the one that I haven't co-founded so far.
And we'll come back with lots of questions because you threw a lot at us, and I know the audience has a lot. They're going to make you dig in. So before we go there, let's move to Saul.
Thanks for reminding. So my journey kind of started when I was maybe where you guys were. I had no idea where I was headed when I was in high school. I always thought my dad was an engineer. I thought, you know, I would follow in his footsteps. It wasn't the engineering, it wasn't right for me. I got to college and I tried. I thought it was the right thing to do, and I was told, like, you gotta just keep doing this, but I didn't. And I went into chemistry, and I got ultimately my bachelor's and PhD in chemistry. I walked out the door one day and just realized, like, what am I gonna do with this? And I had no idea the next step, you know, and every step of the way, you're just always saying to yourself, what am I doing next, right? And this was when I left. I was in Texas at the time for my graduate studies and went to California, and I worked for the Clorox company, consumer products. Nothing like I really thought I wanted to do. I thought I was going to do a postdoc. And I had all these things set up, Hopkins postdoc and all these things that everyone thought I was supposed to do. I ended up in California. The California journey, to me, that part like just really led to, like, that just blossomed everything. I had the best boss I ever had, probably as my first boss. He just explained things, Bob, in a way that was just so down to earth and easy. And I used to tell everyone that I've met in my lifetime, who I've worked with, that I've supervised, same thing. After a few years being out there, I met my wife and we got married. We lived out there for a little while and came back to New York, to the New York region. That's where we were from. Family issues kind of brought us back there. And I started with Bristol Myers Squibb, thinking, oh, a couple of years, maybe we'll see how it goes. Different than Rom, I wouldn't say that there were changes. I think that my career just evolved at that point. It just kept continuing to evolve. So I thought I'd be at Bristol Myers Squibb for maybe a year or two, just like I was at Clorox. And you do this, right? Every 2 or 3 years, you move on to the next company. 25 years later with Bristol Myers Squibb, I had this great opportunity to just grow and evolve in that space. And that was my life. I really did. I went from the science to the business side of the science, to business development, where I was running 2 companies on behalf of Bristol, one in Seattle, one in La Jolla, California. And I realized at that point there was something great about small company, and I really liked it. And I knew when the opportunity came along, when they were like, you know, do what they do in corporate America and get rid of you for the 5th time in 6 years, and you have to reapply for your job. The 6th time, I said, you know what? I'm out. I'm going to this small company, and that's what led me here to Boston. I was in a kidney company called Goldfinch. I went back from the business, and I'm back in science, and leading science in the manufacturing side, in toxicology, doing the animal studies. And I'm now with a company called Neuroimmunity in immuno-oncology.
All right, hi, Wendy Nelson. Like Ron and Saul, actually, I come from an engineering background too. I didn't know you both did, but engineering undergrad. I stayed on at Brown University for a PhD in artificial organs, biomaterials, and cellular technology. So I sort of dove right into the biotech-y type background. Started my career in benchtop science, so I was at Alchemies doing formulations development. From there, I went to a very small startup doing leading project management operations for 2 small programs. And unfortunately, while I was there, one of my middle daughter, who was 4 at the time, had a rare form of cancer herself. So this was a pivot I took in my career purely to balance the home-work life, because this was, I'm aging myself, way before work from home or hybrid or Zoom even existed. So I pivoted into the CRO world where I could do business development from a home office. And so I did that, and it ended up being for 10 years, 4 different companies, climbed the ladder. But I never really wanted to be in sales, so during that time I started my own Boston Biotech Forum to stay kind of relevant and connected and grow my network out here in the Boston ecosystem. So I still run that on the side, but for my full-time job, I finally left the CRO world and to be CEO of a company called Leading Biotech, where I did executive level conferences around the US and in Europe. The pandemic obviously crushed that industry, which was actually fine. I did not love that job. So I pivoted again and went back to BD on the biotech side for a small company trying to raise a round of funding, round of capital. And I stayed there and did some other contract work until I was approached by Danforth Advisors, which is where I am now, and in a role of Chief Business Officer. So I, like Ramani, scientist turned executive, biotech exec. So that's where I am now, and I still run my Boston Biotech Forum on this side.
So there's a lot of, like, I'm not going to add the number of years experience between all, the 3 of you.
A handful.
A handful, just a few years. couple things. First of all, Boston Biotech Forum, what it is and Wendy is driving it on her own. It's a networking event. She organizes many of them a year, I think 12 or 14 of them per year.
14 in 5 different geographies.
14 in 5 different geographies. And what she does is she invites people within the industry to network, to get to know each other, executives, and she puts on panel discussions so we can each learn from each other. And this is a theme for the youngsters in the audience, which is that your learning never ends. Your parents probably tell you also, but it's coming from me, so you can believe me, believe us. Your learning is never going to end, and we'll walk you through what we did there. Our learning about the elements, the natural elements out there, is never ending. And the title of today's session is called "Climb a Mountain, Save a Life." Putting our best foot forward in biotech, one step at a time. The journey is one step at a time, and the destination, as I've been told, being a hiker, and I think Eric, our guide, said this: the destination is not summiting. The destination, actually, you want to go up and come down successfully, and then you're going to go up again, go elsewhere again, and come down. So we're always thinking about the destination, but really it's about the journey, right? And we all have very similar journeys in some respects, but we all have very different journeys. My journey, very in a nutshell, microbiologist by background, so I was not an engineer. I was really bad at physics. I knew I wasn't going to be an engineer in any respect. Scientist, going down the graduate degree path, and then I said after that, I don't want to be pigeonholed. I want to look at things from a broader perspective, and so I made the decision to leave the lab. To do what? I didn't know, but I knew I didn't want to be in the lab. And so I actually went and worked as a scientist at a startup company. I'm from Montreal. I worked at a startup company. I built a science group, an R&D function, and I was thrown into the whole, it was a small company. Somebody said, go talk to the investors. I said, what's an investor? I was really young at the time. You really quickly learn in this field, you're thrown in the deep end often. I think we've all been thrown in the deep end. And guess what? You learn how to swim. That's just the way the world works. I mean, it's just, you're going to learn how to swim no matter what. Presented to investors. They sort of liked what we had to say. I went to another investor and we got some money. And it was like, they funded us. I said, what does it mean to be funded? Again, you learn very quickly. And that was my exposure to the world of what we all know as biotech, which is very different from a pharmaceutical world, which is, I think most of us were there and we all left. Not that it's a bad place to be, but what biotech has that I think we all love is the excitement of innovation. I know Sonal's at a biotech, the excitement of discovering, the excitement of moving and shaking, wearing different hats, doing something different every day, not knowing, in many respects, what any day is going to be like. Similar to climbing a mountain, right? So my question to the panelists, and jump in and anyone can grab the mic from me, is how can climbing a mountain serve as a metaphor for what you do in your daily lives in biotech? Who wants to start us off?
Well, I'll start. That we all mentioned multiple pivots in our careers, and most of them we did not plan at all. Well, it's very similar to climbing a mountain. We got up every morning, we just sort of blindly started down that path. We just trusted that the path would take us where we want to go. You just have to trust in yourself and your gut and take opportunities that seem like the right thing to do at the time, and you'll be following your path, and it usually works out very, very well.
I'll just continue on that, and that just said differently is every day is going to be different in your entire life. It doesn't matter what you do and where you go. Just like that mountain, every single morning we got up, it wasn't just that we blindly went where we went, but the terrain was different, the weather was different, and we all expected, actually most of the entire climb, a lot colder and a lot worse conditions, and it wasn't until summit night, and then
Until it was.
right,
Yeah,
until it was, right? And that's life. That's truly what we do every day. I'm telling you, you go into school and you get thrown something at you and you got to learn something new, or if it's a new job or whatever you're doing, it's always going to be different every single day. And I say you can fight it or learn to live with it and embrace it. Exactly.
The first thing I'll say is you don't need a PhD to climb a mountain.
That's a fact that, and that might be a might have in the audience, you know, what kind of degrees do I need to go after or not? But don't want to interrupt.
So let's start there. Right? To give you some perspective, I've never climbed anything in my life before we started this.
Except for the stairs.
Yeah, and then everything Romani taught me along the way.
Yeah.
Right? So I would say I'll give you a couple of experience points. Right? So when you land in Arusha, which is the airport, to go to Kilimanjaro, you can actually see the mountain top over clouds. Okay, it sticks out. It's a massive, massive mountain at 19,000 feet. So first response was panic attack. Shit, are we really going to get up that high? Right? That's number one. Number two, when we started to take the jeep, you know, it's all banter, and then you see this massive wall of rock. It is huge. Like I don't think you can explain how big this is, because you cannot see the floor from the summit. All you see is a plateau at 15,000 feet, which is pretty high. And so when you see this mountain, you get that second wave of attack. You're like, really? We're going to do this for the next 6 years? So, you know, thinking about life.
Yeah,
days. So when you think about life, you think about life in general, right? You're gonna have to face some hard stuff. You may get some panic attacks, right? And you will be afraid of some of the things you need to achieve. But once you get to the bottom of that mountain, it's just one step in front of the other. You just gotta keep moving. And so as long as you keep moving, you will eventually get to the summit and back. Right?
So a couple of things I'd add to that.
And I'd like to, if everyone's willing and okay, I'd like to go through some of the slides that we pulled together from the trip. But just to add to what Ron and Wendy and Saul said, there's a fear factor piece that kind of all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I can't do this. And then there's this little voice inside of you. It's either that or the 19 other people who you're next to who say, no, you can. No, you can. It's a team effort. I will say today, I've said this before in other discussions, I couldn't have done what I did there without these 3 and 16 other people who were with me, plus the 96 other support team that we had. We had 96 guides, cooks, cleaners, support staff, cheerleaders, champions, advocates. They were there with us every step of the way. So in many respects, we had the gold star version of a hike. But if we were to sort of parlay that into what we do on a daily basis, nothing we do in our world of biotech, which is putting our best foot forward to get a drug into a patient and ultimately to be able to treat that patient to go from a state of dis-ease to a state of ease, none of that happens in a solo situation, right? So we are constantly thinking about how to integrate what we do with what others are doing, and making sure that we are moving forward as a team. And there will be some side steps, as Saul and Wendy said. There will definitely be some back steps, but our goal is always there. So with that, let me show you a few slides. And I didn't really have any commentary to attach to these slides, but folks chime in. If there's anything about a particular slide you want to say or that I've missed, just chime right in, okay?
Well, this is at the summit. So this is after we climbed up 19,300.
Yeah.
Notice we're all frosty.
This was early morning of day 6 or 7. We got up at midnight, and we had no clue what we were getting into, but we started the hike. And there were 20 of us with Wendy leading the pack. And we just, all I did was look at her feet. I looked at the person in front of me, and that's all I did for 7 hours while we were summiting. And we'll talk about the summit in a second, but this is the exuberance you can see and the fatigue.
And it's finally light out. 6 of those 7 hours were in pitch black, so all you had is a circle of light from your headlamp on the back of the boots of the person in front of you.
But let's start from the beginning. So this was us at the base camp, if you will, in Arusha, or just actually Mashame, which is the town where you start your hike, and the people you see here are the guides we used. And these are guides who you listen to. You never went ahead of them. You were always staying behind. And I'll use a word here. We were taught, and we will forever remember. Ingrained is pode, which means slowly, slowly. And that again is like a metaphor for life, right? You're not going to win the race if you run fast. Well, you might if you're actually running a race on the road. But you have to be well equipped, right? And in this case, what saved us and what helped us to succeed was the concept of going slowly, intentionally. So everything we do is with intention. And so here we were going slowly, and again, those are some pictures as we were getting ready down there at the hotel. We wanted to wear our orange little shirts. We didn't bring them today. And then that was, actually that's at 15,000 feet at what's called High Camp, or Karanga. Was it Karanga? Kosovo Camp.
And just to interject, in case you don't know, the oxygen at the peak, at the summit, less than half of what's here. So that's the whole reason for pole, so that you can keep your heart rate at a manageable level.
Yeah. Again, you're struggling with this notion of I'm not fully equipped, much like we are in biotech. We don't always have the answers, but we throw out hypotheses, and then we design experiments to test those hypotheses. And then sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So here, we didn't have all the oxygen available, but we took advantage of whatever was available. That's, again, kind of a metaphor for how we work in our industry. This was the rainforest. So there were 5 zones to get up to Kili. This was the rainforest zone. This was actually day 1. We were all happy and smiley and fit and had no clue what was coming ahead of us. Much like in biotech, you have no clue. You try to do your best to plan. We had a gear check day before this, and again, remember Ron was next to me, Saul was next to Wendy, super organized. You're checking your gear, much like you are, do I have this material for the experiment? Do I have this particular study design that I'm going to execute on for my clinical trial? A lot of planning goes into it. And if along the way you forgot your water bottle, that's a problem, but you figure out how to accommodate for that by borrowing your neighbors or something. So again, there's a lot of planning that went into this. So this was day 1. This was actually, what zone is this called? It was one of the second zones called the moorland zone. So this is where the vegetation starts to go away, as you can see, and you're kind of really facing the elements. The risk is getting higher as you are climbing a mountain. Unlike in our industry, let me just parlay it right back, the risk is actually getting lower as you are progressing a drug or something that is going to be a drug through the pipeline, right? So in our industry, you have something, you're working at science, it's high risk, super high risk. And then as you start to move it down to what we call the pipeline, as you're working on it, you're actually learning more and more, and you're de-risking it. Here, we're actually, it's getting riskier and riskier because the amount of oxygen in the air is decreasing. Any comments on this, guys? No?
I just want to say one thing about our industry, and maybe a little bit different than going up the mountain. While we talk about pulling and going slow, our investors want us to go as fast as we possibly can.
Yes.
And they will tell you that every time you talk to them. And so there's this anticipation, right? And so there's this anticipation you always have that you want to do it right, because boy, if you make you're just going to go backwards if you go too fast. If you make the wrong step or whatever it might be. But I guess the same thing can be said here. I don't think in our group of 20 we had really anybody that really misstepped at any point, right? And the reason was because we had each other's back. And I think Ramani talked about this earlier. It's the same thing in your companies, and you'll know it. When you're in the wrong company and you don't have your back, you don't want to be there. And it feels wrong, and it's just not the place to be. But when they have your back, it's the right place to be, and you can't wait to go to work. And that's how it was here.
Yeah.
Just like coming back. We all still get together all the time because we become like brothers and sisters. And
Well,
Team is everything.
Right, and we keep talking about the same things, but we never get tired of it. We keep saying, remember that time when, and that's a bond you build, much like you're building when you're working with a team in a biotech company, when you're a PhD student in a lab. You're forming these teams of people who are going to help you along your journey, and that's what we have here. This was at camp number 2. This was about 12,000 feet on this side here. and we did a lot of group pictures, and as you can see, we're already pretty dressed up, and we never took these coats off. This is what we lived like for 7 days. We slept in these, we ate in these, we hiked in
You
these.
just added more layers on.
And just like that.
Hide the smell.
And that again is on day 3, getting through the moorland. You can see we're layering on more, and we're starting to get a little colder. This is what actually on day 2, this is at the Barranco camp, where this is what the night skies looked like with Kilimanjaro in the background. It looked so close. Really, I mean, it was like, it's right there, but to Ram's point, it wasn't right there. It was a hike, and those 2 other pictures represent what our camps look like, and here you can see back here, Kili is right there, Kili is right there. So we always saw it, was always sort of like, you know, he was taunting us by being there, and then we climbed it. Here again,
Technically, we are on Kili. That's just the summit that was
yeah, that's right. Yeah, technically we were on, it was a summit, that's right. So another group shot, and then just like whenever we would pause for a break, you know, we were really happy because we got to catch our breath. Here more pictures, more camp pictures, more group pictures. People were tired. We were tired along the way. Again, you know, Kili. Actually, what mountain is that? The other one, I forget the name. Uhuru Peak. No. Uhuru was that?
So that was our peak, right?
Yeah. Anyway, that was another mountain we were tracking. Their soul really happy, you know, kind of sitting and relaxing at a break before we had to get up and go again. That's Kilimanjaro in the background. Here we were hardly at 12,000 feet, and Kilimanjaro is at 19. Again, it looks like it's right behind you. It's almost like you can touch it, but you can't. This is an interesting one. This is called, this was at Barranco Camp, and again, this is almost a vertical wall where you have to literally scale it. Our guides held our hands effectively almost and helped us through, and one of our colleagues, friends over there, Ginger, is kissing the wall. It's called the kissing wall because you get so close to it because there's nothing else behind you that you literally end up kissing the wall as you're going. So we were each doing this and taking pictures of each other.
As you can also see, there's nothing underfoot.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Right? So
there's
if you
a
step
narrow
back,
edge.
there's nothing, right? And we're not tied, we're not roped to anything.
We're just
And we're
shimmying.
just shimming. And you can see the left picture, that's our buddy Andrew, who's going to guide. There's about 6 feet that they let you go on your own. Like you didn't have someone handing you off to someone. And I didn't hear anyone have anxiety. I didn't hear anyone complain afterwards. It was just, it was what it was. We didn't look down, I can tell you that. Well, I don't know why. Until I got to the other side, I looked down. But it was an amazing thing that, I don't know, some people look at this and they say to me, they're like, how did you do that? It wasn't hard.
Yeah.
It was just, I had the support.
It's invigorating.
Yeah. We also had fun. So we don't all go to work and just work, right? We go to our work, we do science, great business, we pitch to investors, we huddle, we talk about what went right, what went wrong, how can we change our strategy, whether it be on the science side or the clinical side or on the investor side. We danced. And I'm going to show you a couple videos. So that's Saul dancing with one of the guys.
Oh, geez.
And there's Wendy and me, and I think Ram is in there as well. Lots of dancing, lots of singing, lots of dancing. Every time we get back to camp at night, the crew would be there with hot tea, popcorn, drinks, not alcoholic, but juice or whatever, and then there'd be a song, which I will play in a second, and we would just all forget the hard work we did during the day and just revel in this sort of happy atmosphere.
Very celebratory.
This is what we ate in every day. This is our mess tent. And so we'd sit and chit-chat. And the thing is, when you have a bunch of scientists and biotechies together, it's inevitable that there's going to be some biotechy talk. So there was a ton of that, but there was also a ton of joking around. Joking around, like, pass me the peanut butter. No, I'm not going to pass you the peanut butter. It was one of these things, or pass me the salt. That was Marissa's. Pass me the salt. It's like, salt? What salt? And it just, you get kooky because there's very little oxygen in the air also. And then that, again, Kilimanjaro in the background. This is summit night. And as Wendy said, headlamps, one following another. And this was actually a point called Stella Point. We'd hiked about 5.5 hours to get to this point. You are exhausted. This is at about 18,300 feet. You are spent. You are just like, what am I doing? Where is my breath? How am I
Bitter
even
cold.
alive? Bitter
Bitter
cold. Snow is blowing at you. And the guides handed us hot chocolate. At which point, we weren't at the summit yet, at which point I broke down. It's so emotional, I broke down. I think others here as well. It was one of those just, I'm not sure where I am, sort of out of body moments, which you often have, I think, in our world with biotech. You know, it's like when you have, for instance, Sonal, you can speak to this way, positive data from a trial or an experiment, the elation you feel, like I hit the milestone, the investors are going to be happy, I can advance this program one step closer to getting into patients. There's an elation you have. So similar to this, you struggle to get there, but you're so excited about the fact that I'm almost at the summit. Anything else on this?
I just want to throw out that I think Ramani handled this, but I can't stress it enough. That night of summit night, especially towards the top, as you had less and less oxygen, at least for me, I'll just speak for me, I don't remember a thing. Something happened with the lack of oxygen that while I was in it, I remember thinking every step, I know exactly what I'm doing, I know where I am, and I was focused at that exact moment. But like 10 minutes, I had no idea what happened 10 minutes ago. And it was my way. When I got back, I remember I talked to these guys and said, do you remember what happened here? I really had a lack of memory. And I have to tell you that the metaphor, analogy with work is not when you get good data, but when you get data that's great. Or you get information in the sciences that you can't know exactly what it means. What do I do with this? Well, you have your investors back there going, let's go, come on, let's move. There's times where you get clouded judgment, and what you really need to do is just take, like we did, take one step,
Deep breath.
and take a big, deep breath every single step, and you'll be fine. And it'll always work out. It always does. We're sitting here, we're fine. Not just from the climb, but from our experiences, all of you. But I can't tell you the young people enough that without the anxiety you're going to hit, because you will, just take a big, deep breath. Really, really just take a big, deep breath and let it be, because you'll figure it out. I promise you you'll figure it out. Or it'll be figured out for you, one or the other.
Yeah. Rob, did you want to add something there?
I mean, I think we should give people perspective as to what Summit 9 really looks like. Because, yeah, we walked for 9 hours, but what is that hill that you climbed to practice here? Or that street you used to go?
Oh yeah, so how many of you are from Lexington? Yeah, so Miriam Hill, Chandler, and what's the other one right next to Chandler? Yeah,
Next to the fire station. So,
yes, exactly,
so
right next to
it's-
the fire station.
It's probably a 20% grade, and it's bad, but it's not too bad. Well, Summit 9 was more like 60% grade, right? And when you're walking, you're not walking straight up. You're walking you're switchbacking the entire way, right? And so, but you can't see where top is because it's dark. And the only thing you can see is either people ahead of you with headlamps or the people behind you. And at one point in time, to get to Stella Point, you don't really know how far away it is. You know it's an hour away. You don't know distance-wise how far away it is. So you're just walking as you would outside, but you're walking slowly. One step, you take a breath. Second step, you take a breath. And for most of us, I don't know about, I think all of us had it. It's volcanic ash as you go up that mountain. So you have to cover your face with a buff. Well, you would breathe everything in otherwise. So you have to cover your face with a puff. And so putting something over your face when you have less oxygen is very interesting. And it's an experience that you get used to it eventually. But pacing yourself, as Ramani said, pull it was important. And I think the last thing I would say is that when you get up there, to Stella Point specifically, I mean, we literally just dropped our bags because we found out from another person who went up, Stella Point, you're almost there. Don't worry about it. 90% you're there. What that person really meant was the steep climb was done. There was another 1.5 miles to go. Right? And so.
But isn't it funny also? Yes, You get to Stella Point, and then you have to do one final stretch, which is to Uhuru Peak, the final summit. Even though it was still an hour and a half or so to go, there was a part of me that felt like, we're there. We're there, even though you're tired, you're dead tired, you're struggling, your body's telling you no, your mind is saying yes, and you're struggling that. But there's, again, kind of that in the biotech world, like, you're almost there. But it was very much, as Ram says, you had no clue. And it was partly just trust.
Right in the guides, yeah. One more push. Okay.
We learned something called a rest stop. Rest step. And that, again, it's like you take a step and you pause. You take a step and you pause. Much like we do in school, much like we do in, as you're sort of engaging in work, you're not always rushing. You gotta stop for a second and just reassess where you are. We did quite a bit of that. And then that on the right-hand side is literally at Uhuru Peak. So this is where Ram was saying the final stretch. It kept going and going and going, but it was flat at least, flatter. And so this was a line of us, Wendy somewhere in the front, and
somewhere, always in the front.
Always in the front. And this was probably 2 minutes until we hit the summit, and then this is us at the summit. And then this is back down. So it's all that effort to get up there, and you're down in a day. So it doesn't take, because you're running down. You're like, I made it, I'm going to run down. You really can't run because you're tired, your legs are not going to take you there. But this was us at the end. These are the guys, those are the gals. I don't know why we separated to take a picture, but we did. And so can I show you a couple of videos, and then I have a couple more questions for the crew here. But after the videos, I want to maybe take a few questions from the audience. So talking about having fun. So this again is where people were welcoming us. Every night we would have this. So you forgot all the troubles of the day and just enjoyed yourself in the context of celebration. Let us leave that at that. And any questions from the audience? I have a couple more for the crew here, but before we go to them, any questions from folks who are off to college or in high school? Yes?
I'm neither in college or high school, and I did that. What was the thing that drove you all to take this on? One is obviously it's a personal achievement. I get that. But how do you see that as something that means something? And I know you did do it as a fundraising. So how did these tie in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So,
and then I have one more question. I'm happy to.
Yeah, so I'll start off on the first one. This was a fundraiser. I should have said that up front. We raised money, as the sign would indicate, for cancer research. It was organized by a gentleman, a journalist in our industry, who's very well known for doing these types of trips. And we raised collectively from our crew $1.2 million that goes towards the Fred Hutch Center in Seattle. Supports a variety of research in all sorts of cancers. So it was an organized trip in that sense. But I'll hand it to you guys to talk about the whys and what drove you to this. Whoever wants to start.
So as I mentioned, one of my daughters had cancer when she was 4. So this was personal for me, for sure. And in fact, I did my research on the researchers at the Fred Hutch, and I found it was Langerhans cell histiocytosis is very rare. There aren't many researchers around, but there were 2 at the Hutch doing research on that type of cancer. So my dollars went directly to them. I actually got on Zooms with them. They did a PowerPoint presentation on their research for me, and I then allocated my dollars directly to their research projects. So that was sort of one of my whys.
I had several, but I had one person in particular we all know who came to me and said she had done Mount Everest Base Camp the year before for the same climb that we were doing for Fred Hutch. And she explained what she had done and told me what we do to raise the money and to train. And then she also reminded me that she did this just months after breast cancer treatment that she finished. And I thought to myself, what do I have to complain about, right? In terms of, I was just turning 60 at the time, and I was like, this shouldn't be a thing. And 2 years before that, it really was why for me. I had one day I just couldn't breathe walking up steps. And what do? Nothing. You don't go to the doctor, you don't tell your wife, and you just keep going. And for 5 days I did that until I got on the treadmill. And then I almost passed out 30 seconds on the treadmill, and the doctor said during COVID, go to the hospital now. And I found out I had a pulmonary embolism, a very large one in my chest. So what I learned about pulmonary embolisms years ago, because I actually worked on the drug that I'm taking today, Eliquis. I helped develop it with Bristol Myers Squibb. What you learn is the diagnosis is scary, the prognosis is great, right? You're going to be just fine once you get there. But it was the doctors who said to me in the first year, you should be dead. Every doctor kept saying it to me, and I was like, just please stop saying that. And I'm just going to live life, and I'm really going to take, life, as best I can. And that was part of my thing here, was say, I want to take this journey, and I want to see where it goes.
For me, it was one of many reasons, but I had a friend who was treated at Fred Hutch. He was diagnosed at age 33 with CLM. At that point in time, Erbitux was still being developed as an experimental therapy. And so the life expectancy at that point in time was 10 years. 5% survival at 10 years. And so he's still alive and got treated at Fred Hutch. And so that was one of my reasons to do this one.
I'll just say I had a personal angle to it, just like everyone else did. I dodged
2 possible cancer diagnoses myself, and I was waiting on pins and needles to find out. And when I found out, it was just one of these, the clouds cleared, and I just thought, I want to support cancer research, having been at the doorstep. So it was a personal thing for me. Yeah. Your second question, you had another one?
Any more? Before, it's a close-up question, but what would you say you learned from this, or how would you put this experience towards somebody who's looking to start up in biotech?
Perfect segue, because my question here to my colleagues and friends is, what advice would you give to youngsters today regarding pursuing a career in biotech? You saw my question. That's exactly what I was going to ask. So, advice to folks in the room about the career paths that you guys have chosen.
I would say there's so much opportunity in biotech right now, and they don't have to have all the answers now. They don't have to know exactly, we've all had so many pivots and have so many experiences within biotech, but they don't have to know exactly which piece they want to be when they grow up. Just major in something that will open the doors, and then take that path and see where it brings you. But there's so much potential and so much opportunity, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. So go for it.
So I'm going to add, I'll just keep adding to it because it's exactly what I was going to say. But there's another piece to this also is be authentic, be yourself. Don't let someone try to tell you you need to be something else, especially when you get to college and when you get to your first job. Be who you are and learn from that. Learn who you are and build from your strengths, right? There's a book called Strengths Finders that I like to kind of push on this. And I think for young people, find a motivation, find a plan, know that you're going to change your plan, because we all do. You're going to change all the time. And the last thing I'll say is ask for help. The one thing I was never taught to do that. I was not taught to ask for help. And I'm telling you, it's the best advice I was taught along my career is, and when you ask for help, those people who help you, those are the people you're going to stick with. Those are the people you want to stick with.
I'll say to start anything, right? There are 3 things that I would say. This trip was very enlightening to sort of put in perspective. First thing is have a great attitude. You need to have a positive, carefree, enjoy life. Don't take stuff too serious at times. And I would say that that was the number one thing our guide pointed out before we started the journey. To say, you need to have a positive attitude before you do anything on this mountain. That is the number one reason for success for folks that summit the mountain or not. Okay, so that's number one. Let's say number two, build a support system that will mentor you and guide you and be there when you need to ask for help. Because you will need help, as Sol said. And you may know it, you may not know it, you may ask for it, you may not ask for it. But if you surround yourself with the right people, they will help you along the way. And the last thing I'll say is just try new stuff. You know, the only way that you really know whether you're going to be successful or you like it or you don't like it is just like any other experiment. You just gotta go try it.
Yeah, put yourself out there a little bit, out of your comfort zone.
It's not rocket science. It's just you just gotta do stuff.
So I'm going to put the youngsters in the audience on the spot here. How many of you? So I'm going to look at 3 of you. Okay. Yes. Have you been matched, or have you do you know where you're going in September? I'm assuming you're all going to go to college. Is that a fair assumption? Do you all know where you're going?
Yeah.
You do. Did you? Are you excited about where you're going?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have an idea of what you're going to do in 10 years?
Not really.
Okay. If you said yes, I'd be a little worried actually.
That's good, you don't need to.
So we got 2 more on this side too.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
How about you guys? Same? Do you know where you're going or what year are you?
You're 9.
You got a little while.
You don't have your plan worked out. You're behind the 8 ball. In Lexington.
Just kidding.
And if ever anyone says that to you, just like it. So, yeah, yes. Hi, what grade are you in?
I'm a rising 9th grader.
Not rising 9. Okay, so you've got your plan all laid out. Sort of. Good. Okay. Good. I mean, I love how Ram and put it in what Sol and Wendy said. It's a journey. You never know what you're gonna bump into, run into. I mean, we were hiking. Of course we were hiking. We were almost to Stella Point. We saw a situation, a health situation that was really scary. It was none of us, it was somebody else in another group, and it was really scary. You saw it only because your headlamp sort of shone on it as you were walking by, and you couldn't really pause to think about it. You just have to continue to keep that positive attitude and move on and continue to pivot along that snaky journey to get up there. And so I think the only thing I would add to what everyone else has said is just be open to new experiences and know that nothing is from point A. You're not going to get from point A to point B in a straight line. It's very rare that you're going to hit the ball out of the proverbial ballpark every single time. It's going to be like this. Whether it's your educational journey, your professional journey, and of course also your life journey. So just be open to those experiences and don't beat yourself up if you don't get it right the first time.
So the challenge is not so much that it's a circuitous journey from point A to point B, but that you don't really know what point B is. Right? So it's that unknown, and part of it is you experience in the ascent that you don't know what point B is. So in that path, as you have described, 2 of you, I think, shifted from engineering and science side to finance and business development. Did you find that you had to, fundamentally change your knowledge base in order to take that route, or was it a natural progression in your learning?
Every pivot I've taken has come very naturally. It sort of fit my personality maybe, or just where I was in life. I don't know, it just seemed like a natural progression, so it wasn't any big deal. You guys?
I would say the same. I mean, it was almost felt natural in a way, but it just happened in that way that I went from science to the business and back to the science with the business behind me now that I knew but I did. So it wasn't like I chose, right? I'm telling you, it's like one of these natural things that maybe through other people. But the other thing is that when you're young in your career, like in life, maybe on the mountain, you don't know what you're doing, and in those first few days, we really didn't have an idea of where we were going and what we were doing necessarily, and we were being told a lot more. The further up we went the mountain, the less our guides told us, because we knew we had each other, we felt like we knew it, and so it's like our careers. Like we just got more confident as we did more and more, regardless of whether you stayed in the science or went out, like we all did, into the business side of the house. It just was a natural way to go.
Yeah, it was very unnatural for me. So it was, I just got dumb lucky, to put it bluntly. So started my career in engineering, got laid off, so I had to pivot to do something different. So I went back to school. Got into J&J, was there for quite some time, and then it wasn't exciting enough for me, so I made a purposeful switch to get to the business side. Took a risk, right? Went and did a business degree in Europe. I wanted to get into venture capital, and so I just, shot towards it. People thought I was crazy because I went from being a researcher to go work in an investment bank, and they're like, you don't know anything about accounting. How are you actually going to go and do any of this? Got lucky and met the right people, and ended up at JP Morgan's healthcare team in London. The goal was to get into venture. Again, got lucky. By the time I did an internship in banking, one of my colleagues, who's French, was interviewing for a job to be at a venture fund, and he said, they're not looking for my phenotype, they want your phenotype, why don't you go and interview? I got the job, so I ended up being in venture for a couple of years. Didn't like it, only because it was in Paris. It sounds like an oxymoron, but yeah. And then came back to the US to start companies. So, I mean, they were purposeful in the fact that, you need to know what point B is. It can change over time, but as long as you're purposeful, I think you're okay.
Yeah.
And you need to get lucky.
I'm going to add to that because someone told me a long time ago, I don't think it's all luck. It's not as lucky as you think. But there's a saying that a friend of mine used to say all the time, luck favors the prepared mind, right? And it's true, chance favors the prepared mind. And it's because we have the backgrounds that we have or that you're going to have, especially in your lives, that are going to prepare you for that. And yeah, there is an element of luck in there, but it's going to choose you because you're the one ready for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm like Ron. Science to business. I wasn't an engineer, but I was a serious scientist. I knew I didn't like it. I didn't know what I liked, or I didn't know what I wanted. But I was, again, lucky in many respects. At every pivot, there was luck involved. But I'm gonna use a slightly altered version of what you said, which is the intersection of. So luck is the intersection of preparedness and opportunity, right? So if you're prepared being the operative piece here, and an opportunity presents itself, oftentimes that intersection is luck, dumb luck, as Ram said. So for those of you who are just about to embark on your continued high school journey, or your actual high school journey, or you're completing a high school journey and you're going to embark into a college world, always be prepared. Always sort of know your stuff, but know that there's other stuff out there, and always be willing to learn, and with an open mind. Yes.
So, as someone going into college, and I'm also interested in the research field, given that all of you had to deal with investing in the business side of things as well as the bio side of things and opening up opportunities, like you talked about majoring in something that opens up opportunities for yourself. Do you think that it would be smart to get a minor in something like finance or business at the undergraduate level, so that you come with this preparedness?
The more the better. Sure. Yeah, it absolutely can't hurt at all.
I was just going to say,
options.
Yeah.
Optionality is
It's
your friend.
key. Yes.
Is key.
Yep.
Don't close the doors. Just options are great. If you can, affordability wise, time wise, whatever, pick your currency. You're never gonna lose if you give yourself options.
Yeah, I don't know, solid.
And that's actually a benefit of pivoting your career too, getting different pieces of the pie as experiences only make you more valuable. So it can always just help.
So I'd say, yeah, it makes good sense maybe to do. I didn't do any of it, right? I went pure science straight through, and I learned it along the way. Maybe that was the dumb luck for me, that I got put into these roles or I got opportunities. Someone just threw me in a room and said, now you've got this job. What are you going to do with it? And I just learned, right? So I got my MBA on the job, basically, I felt. For me and my learning, my business development experience, my legal experience, all the things that I had to do, I learned because I wanted to, right? It's how much you want to take on and how much you want to, I think I heard this here a few times, how much you want to do, right? And how much you want to have it, that experience to just know you can go on so many different paths. You don't know where those paths are going to lead you. But if you don't do it, I don't know if you're those people, but I think most of us are. If you don't do it, you're going to wish you had.
I would say it depends. It depends what else are you not doing that you could be doing, right? So degrees are fine, alphabets are fine, but I would balance that out with if you had an internship somewhere else. I don't know. That sounds more interesting, real world experience. Go climb a mountain, meet new people. It just depends what your other alternatives are. And I don't think you should always just depend on minoring or majoring or just keeping the pedantic perspective in mind.
Right, so experiences matter, and that's what this was about. As I think Rob started us off by saying, you don't need a PhD to do this. You don't, right? You need positive attitude, you need enthusiasm, you need perseverance. All of those qualities are going to serve you in any capacity, no matter what educational and or professional path you take.
Yeah, and I would just add, absolutely true, Rom. I mean, my girls have been through college, or some of them are in college. They major, they minor, but they do sports and they do clubs and they do parties and they do everything else to live life to the fullest and have fun, because you don't get a redo. So,
I think there's one other thing I would add to that, Ramon. You have to take a risk in doing something that is not comfortable. And I think that you need to start doing that early in life. Because if you don't do it early enough in life, you're never actually going to do it later in life.
Well, can I just say for the parents out there, did you hear what Ron said? Let your kids take risk, right? No more, I do this sometimes. Helicopter parenting, out the door, right? That's passe.
But there's a question here.
Actually, I'm not from the biotech field, so what you're talking about is I'm just taking the grain of thought from as a parent perspective, it's like, hey, what I can tell to my child who is going to the bioengineering field, which I do not know much more about than hearing around itself. What I was trying to get out of it is, as a parent, what we can guide the students who are going into the bioengineering field, so that when they come back for the guidance, which I know I may not be able to give the what is right approach, or what might be the right thing, at least what we can tell them apart from those age-old experiences what we're talking about, apart from the actual real life, okay, you should do this, you should do that, you should do that. And that's what they're looking for, the short-term guidance rather than long-term guidance, right? Take a risk. It's very easy to say, right? But
no, I would say, sorry if I can just start that off. So I switched careers where I did not have any formal education. I did not have a background in the technical aspects. I had multiple reports underneath me. I had bosses that I had to report to and tell them about technical stuff, but I didn't learn any about it, right? And so you find out that if you want to give guidance, most people that you talk to, even your kids, they'll know what they want to do. So your job is not to tell them the answer. Your job is to tell them to figure out very, very high-level questions that will help them get the answer. So if you don't know stuff in biotech, that's absolutely fine, but you do know life. And so at the end of the day, that's really what guidance you can give the kids, is most of them have the answers.
There's a piece we haven't even talked about here, or touched on here, but it's something that I was, again, never told in my childhood, and our parents didn't know enough to tell me this, but it's all about building your network. And I can't say enough to my own children. That's all I taught. It wasn't about go get your engineering degree or your law degree or whatever it was, but build your network. And I think it transcends biotech or any other industry, because when you get, and I'm telling you guys this early on also, is get a mentors. Have mentors behind you. Learn from people who don't necessarily are in biotech, but they're doing things that are just so clearly guiding you in ways that you have no idea that they're guiding you, right?
Yeah.
So those two things for me were major steps to make my success.
Yeah. I will say, just to the specific question,
I mean, you're in Lexington, I'm gonna assume. There's lots in Lexington, I mean, literally you can't swing a cat, don't swing cats, but you can't swing a cat in this town without hitting someone who's in some technical field, whether it be biotech or high tech, or so. Part of it is leveraging the network, but network like literally in your backyard, literally. And one of the things that Sonal didn't mention that she's starting along with several of us in this ladies or women's biotech group here is we're starting to set up a peer mentoring initiative where people like that, if your child had questions, you could look up any one of us and look at what our backgrounds are, and if your child has a question about, hey, I'm curious about biotech, or I'm curious about investing, you can look up this database that we're hoping to set up and then ping that person as a parent and say, hey, could you give a little bit of guidance? Notwithstanding what Ram said about general life guidance, which is critical that you will give as a parent, there could be some very subject-specific guidance that anyone. So we're not quite there yet. So don't hold us to it. But that's what the ultimate plan is going to be.
Yeah, just I really appreciate the personal stories, right? When you talk about your own daughter, right? Yourself, and of course personal stories. What fascinated to me was the strength you derive from those experiences to all the way to the summit, right? Having done this now, right? How has it shaped personally for you, right? The strength.
it's another question.
I would say the climb was very transformational in that it was a huge reminder that there's so much more to life than just the career and just the job. And life's short, and maybe I've been working too much, and maybe I need to get out there, because I actually found out not too long ago that I carry 2 genes, one from my mom and one from my dad, for Alzheimer's. So I might not have more than 10 good years left. So things like this, that's what makes life meaningful now.
Wendy's actually famous. She had a publication that came out in Forbes.
And Reuters.
So
You could hit Apple News, Yahoo News.
Google Wendy Nelson Reuters and you'll read her story.
So talking about the Alzheimer's, what was your question again?
Well,
How is it giving you strength?
Okay, I was gonna say. So, what's interesting, I came back and I can tell you, I was not very strong when I first got back. It was that first week, I was like a marshmallow. My wife could tell you, I couldn't talk to anyone, I was sleeping most of the time and everything else. But after that, seriously, it was just the continued understanding that it wasn't about getting up to the top of the mountain. It was nice. We could say we did it. It was a purposeful goal, but it was the journey. It was getting to know every one of our team and the 93 people that helped us in a way that it's like I can't explain. And this is what you do day in and day out, right? With your jobs and your networks and the people that you meet. And when you get great data, maybe like we talked about earlier, how it just hits you in your heart that you're helping patients. So I had the opportunity to work with hepatitis C drugs for years and years and years. We had a very close friend of ours who lost his, had a liver transplant was in a medically induced coma for like close to 2 months. Started taking interferon, if you know what that is or anything, it's just a terrible drug. And it just makes you awful. And he had to quit taking it. He said, I'd rather die than take this drug. Yet 6 months later, we came out with our trials for this drug. He was able to start taking this drug. He's cured. It was curative as a drug. The fact that I
That
had
doesn't
that,
happen often, just
no,
just FYI.
I'm right. I want to
An
make that
amazing
clear.
story, yeah.
Right, but the fact that you get to touch these things and maybe get to do something in your life that has an impact on all these other people's life, that's part of it. Sure.
I don't know how to answer that question because this is the first holiday I've taken in a really long time. So definitely gave me perspective not to work for a few days.
He was pretty relaxed though. He was my teammate. I tell you, he was pretty relaxed.
I have a small, short answer to that.
What it allowed me, what I walked away with is knowing that mental blocks are what you put on yourself, right? So my mind, I was like, I'm not sure I can do this. I'm not sure I can do this. I went in with a positive attitude, with that can-do attitude. So I do Peloton. I don't know how many of you do Peloton. There's an instructor who says, she keeps repeating, she goes, I am, I can, I will, I do. I am, I can, I will, I do. She repeats that ad nauseum throughout the workout. At the end, she says, and you just did. So believe it or not, actually I was repeating that mantra as we were doing the summit night. I am, I can, I will, I do. Probably 10,000 times over the 7 hours. But what I got out of it was that overcoming this mental hurdle, I can do it. Like, I didn't know, I set out to do something, and I can, and it's because of everything else around me, the team, the environment, the support, the inside sort of gusto, if you will. And you realize if you dig deep enough, you can do it, right? And so that's what I got out of it.
So I've been observing for you, and the things that stand out, and I think that makes for a strong team is, one, you have effortless communication. So you seem to communicate really well together, right? Second is mutual respect. So it sounded like each of you, even though you were all climbers, you still all played a different role in that team. It sounds like Wendy is the organizer.
Romani's an organizer.
No.
She just had to be in front all the time.
She was
following
in front.
her.
She was the fastest.
Quicker for me.
But each of you had a different role to play, right? Because of your own personalities and your experience. And isn't that true in biotech? Because when I started out in research, when you come out of school, I thought biotech was basically basic research, right? And I realized it's just the tip of the iceberg. And that's it. When I mentor younger people, I always say that there's so much to do in biotech.
You should also give credit to pharma because I work in
Right, sorry.
Oh, sorry, of course. Yes, you're a beacon. You're a beacon.
Pharma, academia, right? It's basic research is the tip of the iceberg. And you don't need a PhD, and there's so many functions, and each function is important. So it's basically like your team that's paramount.
Yes,
And what do they say about the most successful companies? It's usually because the team dynamics are the best,
exactly.
and that creates success.
And you become lifelong friends.
We do. And I think Saul was he was
Calming influence.
a calming influence. Just okay, Tracy.
I may not agree with that.
I like to think that I
She's
talk
my
to
comment.
do that.
I mean, and Ron was the jokester, like constantly. And Wendy was just the pace setter. She of course was held back. Like you couldn't go in front of the guy, so the guy was in front always, the lead guy, and then Wendy was always right behind there. So yes, we all sort of played a role. And Sonal, you're so correct in saying that in what we do in our daily jobs or daily work, we're all playing a role.
And leaning on each other, and good team dynamics makes for success.
And every function matters, right?
Every function matters.
All the way from the top to the bottom, and respect is so important.
Absolutely.
I think NYU over here is.
Yeah. It was really interesting to hear you summarize your lives and careers, but I'm really curious on the time frame and the steps you really needed to take to climb up the ladder, and whatever hurdles you faced that we should expect.
I guess you can't always know and expect what's going to be ahead. First of all, it's there are unknown pivots and turns ahead, right? Like some of my major turns were because of medical issues in my family, right? So I wouldn't concentrate so much on expecting that, just expect that, well actually one more point is, you might think your goal is here. You might say, I definitely want to be a CEO someday. And then you might get there and you might not realize that that's actually not the quality of life you like or something like that. So your goal might even be a moving target as you move through life, as you have children and a family, or retire or become an empty nester, whatever your path of life, your goals might change too. So I'm not sure you can exactly expect where the challenges are going to be, but anyway, are you going to NYU?
I am.
Oh, my daughter's graduating from there next week.
Oh,
My
congratulations.
nursing school, honors nursing program. And she's the one that had cancer, and so she's going to be a pediatric oncology nurse.
Congratulations.
Circular.
So, I have a different perspective completely.
And this is the other thing. We used to disagree a lot in my conversation. No, I see. So it's like one of those things where we're just, respecting.
This is my personal thing, right? My whole family, my friends, maybe a lot of you guys know this. What my motivation was people who said you can't, right? I had so many times people say to me, you can't do that. It started out when I went to college. If you go to that college rather than the University of Maryland honors program, you will never amount to something. That was the first person who said it was my father's friend. And I'm like, oh yeah, watch this. And it just kept going all through my life. I've had people tell me, you can't or you won't.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found a way to say,
You just did.
right, I just did. What was the end?
I am, I can, I will, I do.
And then I did.
I did, right? And so it's really true, and you've got to find whatever, that's the authentic piece that I was telling you earlier. Find out what it is in you that motivates you. We were just, these guys, I think most of them were part of a crew that the CEO Forum is a biotech forum that we have in the area also. And we did a group of 6 young lab scientists. We were trying to understand, why are people leaving the lab and taking business positions rather than staying in the lab? And there's a lot of different answers and a lot of different reasons, but their motivators and their demotivators and the things that we heard as the leads, knowing that they're going to be the leaders of the future, we need to listen a little bit more also. That's the other thing that, from our perspective, we need to hear from you. Like, what are you thinking? What do you want to hear? What do you want to do?
So we had our guide would say, make it work for you. Okay. And because everybody has different motivations. Everybody has different things they want to accomplish, right? For some people, it could be money, and that's a track. For other people, it could be quality of life, that's a track. Or you just want to go and, work for 6 months and go see the world for 6 months. Whatever the case is, I wouldn't think of it as a ladder per se. I would think of it as a rope which you can swing, climb, chop off, whatever, right? But I think what Sol said is important. You will see people that will say, you can't do it. Because it's easy to say you can't do it, right? So it's important to have that positive attitude to say you can. I think the second thing I would encourage you to do is always know people who've had experiences and know what your options are. So when I was growing up, I didn't know what my options were until I got to very late in life. Okay, afterwards something broke and I did everything. So I would say keep your options open, understand what the options are. Even if you don't take it, it's just good to understand. And so when you form a clique in college, in high school, in work, or whatever, make sure that you have disparate cliques so that you learn from each clique separately. It's not common. I mean, people call it diversity, but you need to have diversity of thought in terms of how you do it. So you're going to face a lot of people. I mean, the biggest thing you'll hear is no.
We hear it every day.
Yeah.
Not a day goes by where I don't hear no in some way, shape, or form regarding some aspect of what I'm doing or what I want to do or what I think we should do. But it's one of those things where you just like, well, here's an alternate view, and here's why we think I think we should do it. So it's countering that no with why not
And how. And how?
The other part is you talk about the ladder, and I think Ron said this. There is no, do you see the four of us? There is no ladder. What each of us did to get to where we went, you're going to find your own. If you want to be really successful, find your own path, and that's really achievable.
But can I just say, I mean, success doesn't mean to be at the top of the pyramid.
No,
Exactly.
It doesn't mean to be at the bottom of the pyramid. It just, it's what you want to accomplish. And you may not know that when you start, as somebody said, you don't know where point B is. But at the end of the day, it's a balance between what you want to do intrinsically, and you just have to make it work for you. You want to go write a novel for a year? Well, go do it. You need to figure out how to make money during that 1 year, but
Yeah,
you gotta go do it.
You know, I will say, just to sort of give college a push, get a college degree. Don't like walk away. Get the college degree. Just get that, you know, get that. So all the parents can rest, you know, like sit.
Rob said I should travel half the year.
Yeah, and you can still travel, but get a degree because you don't necessarily need, it's an option and it's a reasonably achievable option for most people. But to what everyone here is saying, option is your best friend. Always keep moving, meaning don't sit and expect things are going to come to you, right? That's just an obvious thing, but sometimes it's worth saying that. Like, you know, if someone's like, to your question, what are the steps you take? Well, don't not take a step. It's okay to rest a little and take a nap once in a while, and absolutely, but even taking 6 months off is doing something. It's getting experiences. It's opening up a whole world that you otherwise would not have opened up. And that'll influence you, impact you, guide you to doing something next. So it's a constant journey, and I fully agree with the notion of success. We, in our day-to-day lives, I think, define success, and we make a mistake of defining it in a certain way. You know, success is there. It's the top of the mountain. We felt quite successful up there, but I would say we felt even more successful when we came down, right? You now can, like, you have bragging rights. You can say, I did it, to my Peloton instructor's statement. We did it. So, you know, define success, as Ron said, it's your own definition, your own, like, for me, sometimes I define success as doing something I'm proud of. You know, I was successful because I'm proud of what I did there. Yeah. So that to me is success. You know, yes, we summited. Actually, one person in our group didn't summit, as it turns out.
But she was safe.
She was safe. She chose not to. We got to high camp, Kosovo camp, and she said, I'm done. I'm not going to do it. For her, she was successful. So be mindful, be cautious of using industries or external definition of success for yourself. Like, you ought to be, as going back to what Saul said, be authentic to yourself. You know, however you define success is the right thing, but don't stop moving.
And that's exactly what I was saying. You know, it might be get a college degree and then grad school, and I'm going to definitely go up this ladder there. You don't have to preset that whole ladder, because what gives you the most fulfillment and happiness might be not what you think it is today. And keep that mind open.
Right, and again, get the college degree, and if your parents are happy with you moving back home, maybe that's okay. But I suspect they're probably going to say, go do something, right? Go do something. And so to that point, just go do something and talk to people. Yeah. You know, the one thing, again, going back to the we're going to date ourselves comment, back when I was growing up, and much like any of these people here, we didn't have these resources. We didn't have people we could rely on, say, you're doing this, can you tell me what you do? I want to learn from this. Oh, you're doing something different. You have that at your disposal, right? You live in an environment, you live in a world, social media, none of that was there. Email didn't exist.
We didn't have computers, so we were in a bubble.
They were talking about themselves.
I majored in engineering, I didn't even know what it was.
Right. You guys are smart. You're so much savvier than we were at your age. Yeah. And I'm so bowled over. I'm so humbled, frankly, by how savvy youngsters are. I need my 11-year-old to show me how to do something on a computer sometimes. I'm kidding. I saw Sonal and Vedant, right? Yeah. Right. So you guys are living in a different world.
Yeah.
And so you're actually one step ahead. Use that to your advantage.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Totally. I totally agree.
As you know, I'm from the technology side, so obviously I know the pace of the technology moving forward is kind of a very, kind of becoming more like exponential curve itself. So how do you see the biotech industry, you know, the people who are coming up itself, when they pass out, when they come out of the 4 years college itself, how that will impact how that will be drastically changed? Because sometimes people are saying technology is going to change, lots more things are very in not knowing ways. So like for example, lawyer job, maybe there may not be no need of lawyers in a drastic way, or maybe in that sense of how.
Yeah, but biotech does not follow Moore's law. Unfortunately, in some respects, we can't get drugs to patients fast enough. So it's progressing. Pharma is much slower, but we work in concert with our pharma colleagues. So there's always something to do. You know, when you're coming out of your 4-year degree, there will always be something to do to contribute to the biotech world. It's not moving at such a fast pace that if you learn something today, 3 years from now you're going to be obsolete. If that's the case, we should all be out of jobs.
Yeah.
Right?
In fact, we hope that you bring things to us to learn that you've learned that we didn't know, right? I mean, the things that you're learning in school. For all we know, you're doing things, and that'll be
more
our
more up to date.
But that said, there is a lot happening in the scientific space where there's new technologies, novel approaches. There's so much novelty and innovation. We navigate in a world of innovation, is what we say here, and that doesn't change. That's going to be constant. Whether or not it's truly implemented and then a drug comes out of it is yet to be seen. But in the early stage of innovation, it's like that swan swimming above water. There's a ton of stuff going on. I know Ron's company is working on some really interesting RNA. Space. Yeah. So, and that whole world of RNAi, which is a type of therapeutic modality, has burgeoned over the years, and it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. And if you guys want to add anything there? I know there's one more question which we'll get to, but yes.
Yeah, I just have a kind of clarification for the young ones here. If you guys can have some advice. You talked about risk, options, and I know all of you four have a very analytical foundation. So for the young kids out there that take risk, how did you take that? If you have to have a calculated risk. You have to think that through. Can you shed some light how you went about that to these young kids? Because when you just say risk, I'm just gonna take a risk. There's a thought that goes behind it. Can you just explain that to the young kids in the room, like your process as you guys were pivoting, taking risks, and so forth? What was your thought process? What was the rationale? How did you weigh the benefit, the pros and cons?
Let's do that one. That's a good question.
I'll speak for the choices that I made. So the first step was coming back to school. So when I graduated for my master's, I ended up getting a job in a different city. I went there. I was pragmatic about it. I was going to make a lot of money. I didn't buy an expensive car. I didn't buy a new car. I bought a stick shift, purple Honda Civic, 10 years old. It was a great thing I did that because I got laid off and I had to come back to school. And it was, if I didn't have that, that would be problematic. Right? So when I came back, the risk that I took was to start a project in bio, which I had no experience in. But the idea of learning something new, entering a space that was uncharted, not knowing what the result was going to be, was interesting to me. I did not want to do a PhD because I would have gone in and become a medical doctor otherwise. I did not want to do a PhD because I wanted to go out and work and get experience. But as I told you, you never know where you're going to end up sometimes, and so ended up doing it. So fast forward another 10 years. I made a conscious choice to go to Europe to go do a business degree. I was doing fine in my job. The calculated risk was you have to believe in yourself in the form of you are going to get a job. It is not a question of if you're going to get a job or not. You've been prepared for your entire life
up until that point by doing all the grit and the work that you put in, starting in middle school, all the way through. And so you know you can get another and get another job. So with that perspective in mind, my family and I had a daughter already. My older one is 14 now, so she was 18 months old. We decided to move shop and go to Europe. Right? How bad could it be? Go live in France, enjoy life a little bit. Worst case scenario, you come back to the U.S. You have another opportunity to go back and get another job. So I think that when you talk about risks and when you talk about having a foundation, I think you have to believe in yourself and you have to give yourself enough credit to the fact that you can. The lowest table risks at the table are getting a job that you can do. It may not be what you want to do. It may not be what is ideal in your mind, but think of it as a stepping stone, right? So when you don't have any expectation, you know you can make some money to feed your family. So those are the two big things I would say. And then the last thing is when we came back, again, it was an absolute risk. Neither my wife or I had a job when we came back from Paris. We literally decided one week saying, all right, we can go back, I'm sure we'll find something. We had friends, we had a network, we could tap in and say, listen, I'm coming back, you need to give us, we need to figure something out. My wife was, I think, 6 months pregnant at that point in time, so which was not great with our second one. And you need insurance for all the young kids. You need insurance before you can come back. And so, but we had friends who we had an opportunity where both of us got jobs. And so, and then we started building and starting companies along those lines. So when you think about risks, I think it's the context of one, believe in yourself, trust in yourself. And to be able to do that, you need to have a solid foundation, whether it's in high school, whether it's in college, whether it's work experience. You need to be able to prove to yourself that you can actually do that. Up until that, right? That's when you start taking risks. Part of it is mental, part of it is not mental, part of it is just having that evidence. And I think if you can balance those two, you'll be in solid footing.
I would say safety net, right? Figure out what your safety net may be in any particular situation. In one of Ron's examples, his network, knowing that he had people to, that was a safety net. So if everything else failed, that was a safety net. In another situation, it could be, well, I could always go back to living at home, or I could always go back to that city, or I could always go back to that job. Figure out what that safety net is. I think that's how you mitigate.
Or option two.
That's
Optionality. Goes back to optionality, the importance of your network, and they're not always calculated risks. I would say they're opportunities. It's how you look at it too. It's your mindset, right? Take a total pivot. It's an opportunity to learn something new, to get increased exposure, to broaden your horizons, broaden your depth of experience.
Anyone here know what a SWOT analysis is for the young kids, younger people? Do you know what a SWOT analysis is? You will. Very soon. Once you hit, you'll learn it. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. SWOT, right? So for every strength, there's going to be a weakness. For every threat, there's going to be an opportunity, etc. So any challenge is a challenge if you look at it like this, but if you step back, you're like, oh my gosh, look at that opportunity. So again, you take risks in the context of the holistic picture, knowing that there's always going to be a safety net for you.
So I'm just going to add a little bit different here, because you see the four of us in front of all of you, and you know where we've been, and we've been telling you how we've sort of gotten there, right? There's a whole world out there of people who don't do this, who don't take risks, who just follow whatever it might be, a path. It's not wrong. It's just they do what they do. You got to do what works for you, right? And we can say this 100 times in different ways. But part of this calculated risk that you talk about, I don't think there was ever a time that I said to myself, if I do A, B, and C, I'm going to get to go here. But I knew if I had that foundation pieces, that the risk that I took wasn't necessarily calculated. We used the word opportunity, or whatever it was. If you don't do that, it's not wrong. It's just how much do you want to put yourself out there? It's your personal kind of internal risk taking, right? I think Ron and Wendy and Romani have a different level than I do. I know they do, right? But we all have different things at different times. And it's just gotta be, you've gotta be who you are. And it goes back to like trusting in yourself and believing in yourself. So I don't mean to belittle the calculator risk part of it, you know, to get where we did in even school, right? I mean, I'm not kidding. I was sure I was going to, you know, a major university and doing an honors program. And I was like, I think I'm going to do this over there. I just knew in my heart it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, and that's I think, you know, as we start to wrap this up, it's like, don't use this too much. I mean, use it, clearly. But rely on this. I mean, there's an emotional part, but your gut, you know, we don't pay enough attention to what's in our gut. You know, the microbiome actually matters a lot. Rely on what you're feeling. Your intuition will ultimately guide you. And I don't mean to say that by getting on a soapbox. And you know, I'm not speaking esoterically here. You'll know if it feels right. Like Ram didn't feel right doing something. Saul didn't, and you know, when we were climbing the mountain, there was a time where I didn't feel right about something, so I had to like take a step to the side to feel better. Same with Laurie, you know, the woman who didn't summit. You know, she didn't feel right about taking that last leg. Her intuition, she knew it. So just continue to. It's tough even now. It's tough for me to sort of say intuition will guide, because typically you want to think with the head and you're calculating the risks and you're doing your pros and your cons and you're tabling it out in Excel spreadsheets and doing the analysis, and it's like sometimes you can do that, but put all that aside, and if it feels right for you to go to NYU and do what you're doing, you do it, right? And at the end of the day, if it feels right that you want to take 6 months off, you do it. Knowing that every step is a stepping stone towards your ultimate destination and goal. So
I mean, I will say one thing, or at least for the younger folks. You have to work hard. There's no two ways about it. Right? Whether, you know, these guys may look fine right now and feel like they're happy folks at this point in time. When we went up the mountain, there was times when we needed grit. There were times when you had to push through. There were times where like, why the heck am I doing this?
Oh, by the way, did we tell you that we trained for 6 months? Yeah. 6 days a week? Yeah. Right? I mean, there was something behind that. Yeah. Right?
So you have to put in the time. You have to put in the work. There is no alternative. No matter how easy it will be, you still gotta put in the time. And it's only after that, and you know, as I said, the foundation, you need that no matter what you do. That's when things become easy.
But that's true with life. The biggest rewards are the most challenging things that you work the hardest to achieve, and when you do, it gives you the most fulfillment. So,
and I know we're sort of direct. I know we're directing these comments to the people who are off to college, but it matters for anyone who's still in school, you know, entering high school, entering middle school. I tell my son the same thing. Best effort always matters, because without that, nothing else matters. So that's, you know, again, soapboxy statement, but that's what we're going to do, get on our soapboxes.
It's table stakes.
Table stakes. It's completely table stakes, yeah. So, I think we're about to wrap up, yeah? Sonal, thank you for the invitation. We could keep talking about this all night. I was culling through thousands, so we have a shared Google Drive where all 20 of us have dumped pictures. You can imagine how many we have in there. So I was sitting last night, the wee hours of the morning actually, culling through this, and I cannot show these people 10,000 pictures. So I did what I could and picked a few, but there are more stories, and you know, there's a lot of depth behind this, but I think this, you know, really summarizes what we all said: hard work, grit, teamwork, foundation, goal setting, traversing the journey, and then being able to say, you know, bragging rights at the end of the day. So, and we had a terrific time. I'm sure we would all do it again. And so, thank you.
We're finding our next mountain now.
We're finding our next mountain now. So, thank you again for the invite. You want to?
I just want to thank everyone who came, and of course the 4 panelists. Thank you so much. It was amazing. all I could think about was, you're right, biotech, pharma also, sorry, is like climbing mountains, high risk but high rewards, right?
Completely. That's the way we would end it.
Absolutely.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
I haven't met you. I'm Rohan. Rohan, nice meeting you. So no. NYU's mom. Yes, of course. Yeah, I walk the dog all the time, so I'm sure it's I know you. So I usually look like a homeless woman the first time in mind, but yeah, I'm usually walking the dog. Okay, we're 24 parts. One with the yellow parrot.
Yeah, okay, so recently.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
you're the first housekeeper.
Oh, very nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. I'm sure I'll see you around.
Yeah, that would be nice.
It's so much more nice.
Very nice event. Two of them. Forestry in Lexington and one's Wendy actually lives in Foxborough. And she said that there was a woman in biotech, she would be the woman in biotech. So I'm just going to find out if I'm learning about this is great.
It's still recording.
Yeah, I should probably switch it off. I don't know how to work this.
Thank you so much. This was so